Hi, everybody in She Sparks community. I have the lovely and wonderful Kristen James with us. This woman is on fire and last year crushed it with 8 million in sales. I'm pretty sure I have that right.
Close to it.
And she's just a rock star with her sphere and like a magnet. Everybody who knows her loves her, and I just love spending lots of time with her. So anyways, I'm excited to interview her today all about neighborhood events because she is starting to get, I think you got what, 3 leads in the last like month or so. So we're going to dive deep into that. But Kristen, one of my favorite Kimmy-isms is give us a little bit of your real estate life in like 1 minute or less. Ready, go.
Oh boy, I didn't prepare for this part. Anyway, I got started in real estate during the pandemic. So kind of later in 2020. So by early 21, things had kind of picked up a little bit of speed. So I'm kind of rounding out my third year in real estate full time, and I love it.
That's awesome. That is great. Well, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. So let's talk about neighborhood events and let's talk about origination of such a thing and what it even means.
Great. Well, this is one of my favorite topics, and it's actually been one of um, the more fulfilling parts of kind of my growing business. And so I'm glad that this is our topic today, and really have to credit you, Corey, with some of the motivation and encouragement. And I think back to 7, 8 months ago, and you helped me pull address labels, for my very first event invitation that I did in my neighborhood. But kind of real quickly, I had been wanting to do some sort of gathering with my neighbors. I'd lived in my house for 4 years, so I was a little embarrassed, like, gosh, it's not like I just moved in, but wanted to have a way to gather people and just get to know more people. I knew a handful of neighbors, but really wanted to know more. And, I thought holidays would be a great season to do that. And so I actually had intended to do my first one like back in December of 2021. And, be it as it may, it took until December of 22 to actually pull the trigger. But that was kind of the first event that has since kicked off a series of gatherings with my neighbors.
That's awesome. And what has really inspired you to do an event with your neighborhood?
Yeah, I think a couple of key things. One had really nothing to do with real estate, was just an interest in building relationships with the people who live around me and wanting to know more of them. Certainly you see people when you're out walking, or there's a lot of dog owners. So, people are out and about, but I think there was just this interest in just deepening the level of relationships. So not just who lives where, but getting to know the people who live here and figuring out who lives here full time, who's here part time. There's a lot of nuances in every neighborhood, but so I think the beginning was just really a desire to get to know my neighbors and to be known by them. And there's just um, the the aspect of looking out for each other, when people are on vacation, or there's some elderly folks in the neighborhood, so just that safety piece in caring for each other. So that was really kind of the heartbeat behind it. But then, of course, being a real estate agent, it was a great opportunity to expand my sphere and my network of relationships, and how convenient to do that right where you live. So yeah, so again, it has so many upsides. But yeah, the relational piece, and then the impact, or the hoped for impact on my real estate business.
That's awesome. And I know for you, it hasn't been really even the leads, of course, are wonderful, but also like I know you've met a handyman and you met, you know, someone who's really good at I forgot. You've met quite a few people in your community that also could support you and you support their businesses. So I love that, the like adding value. So take us through like from start to finish. I know this is gonna feel like a lot, but from start to finish, take us through your very first event and what that meant, meaning like who you invited, how did you figure it out, the label, like all that stuff. Take us through beginning to the event, and then after that, we'll talk about some other examples that you've done.
Great. Yeah. So for my first, I did a holiday happy hour a couple weeks before Christmas on a Thursday, kind of late afternoon, early evening. Just tried to find, what I thought was going to give me the most chance for a good outcome. And then I think you and I had sat down together and pulled up my neighborhood on, I can't remember which particular software program we used, whether it was Remine or was that the one? And so I don't live in like a totally straightforward neighborhood. So it, like where you draw the lines is kind of arbitrary. And so I just picked obviously the street that I live on, and then some adjacent streets and cul-de-sacs, trying not to get overwhelmed by the number of houses in that kind of grouping, but also just thinking through like traffic patterns and who am I most likely to see and run into, and who passes by my house on a daily basis. And so that was kind of the selection. And then you and I just sort of pulled that list in Remine and were able to produce mailing labels. And the reason I did the mailing was actually two parts. One was because I didn't have anybody's contact information. So I couldn't just send an email, or, we don't have like a Facebook group for our particular neighborhood. I didn't have, phone numbers, except for maybe one or two people. So I was sort of forced to do a mailed invite, but I also wanted to do a physical invite. I think that first one, and it was Christmas, so it was sort of like a holiday theme, to the invite. And I'll tell you, the response from that was overwhelming. Even people who couldn't come were so honored to get an invitation. So I think it was really meaningful to put something in the mail that they could, get. And who doesn't like mail? So that was really fun and had a great turnout. So, I didn't want them to feel like they needed to bring anything. I just wanted them to show up. And so I provided a couple of like specialty cocktails that I made, had some wine, and then I was gonna keep it really simple and do like popcorn, and but of course I like get the shrimp and cocktail sauce. And had a bigger spread than I anticipated, but it was a big hit. And people showed up, and then of course they brought things, just to offer
I'd
to
love
the
to talk
gathering.
about that simplicity thing because I feel like you still, I had the honor of getting to attend this event, and I feel like you did it really well because you didn't make not hollandaise sauce,
The cocktail sauce.
cocktail sauce. You didn't make that, but you grabbed it from Sam's Club and it was really freaking good, guys. So you had that, and then you grabbed the meat wrapped with the cheese and you cut them in half so they go a little longer. And like I just think you were so creative, and you did that so well that it was still simple, but people really enjoyed all the little extras. And oh my gosh, that cream cheese dip, I still think about that. That cranberry. Oh, you guys, we'll have to figure out the recipe
I'll
later.
share the recipe.
Yeah.
So I did make a few things myself, but like you said, I think it was also how I framed, when you keep the expectations really low, then you can go all out and not feel like you're having to reach some sort of standard, because I didn't set a standard. I just was like, hey, stop by for a cocktail and a drink, and let's toast to the Christmas season. But then I just couldn't help myself, and did that. But really, like, don't I don't want people to feel like that's what they have to do, like they have to do this big spread. It really was inexpensive, what I ended up pulling together. And you guys, I really enjoy hospitality, so it just kind of fit in like a natural skill set. So it's something I enjoy doing, so it doesn't feel like work, to pull that together, where for some other people that might feel like, oh my goodness, that's a huge burden.
And so did you have people text you from there or give you a call to RSVP or email? Like what was your RSVP?
Yeah, I gave them options. I think I said either text or email. Um, so yeah, most people texted in response to either say they could come or they couldn't come. Um, and then and then at the event, I was able to capture email addresses, additional phone numbers for, their spouse or their partner. So that was kind of the beginning of collecting information, so that for future events, I didn't have to rely on a physical invitation. I could, in most cases, I've done electronic invitations through Evite, something simple. But I usually deliver it by email and then follow up with text invitations.
And now they're in your CRM, which is lovely, and added into your pipeline and your feed. Another thing I feel like you had on your check-in table was a name tag. And I personally was like, oh, that's a little cheesy, but I can see how it was helpful. But I felt like it was like amazing. Everybody loved that because you met like 12 new people and you'd forget their names, but you were introduced. So it was just a good reminder and visual for us visual learners. It was helpful too.
Yeah, I really went back and forth on whether to do name tags, and was really glad that I did, because I know how hard it is to remember a couple people like right after meeting them. And it turns out I sort of had this expectation that they would all know each other and I was going to be the newbie, not knowing any of them. But I mean, they were hilarious. Like I was apologizing for having taken 4 years to invite people over, and they were like, oh honey, we've lived here 25 years and we've never done anything. so so that took away any guilt or feeling badly for not having done it sooner. But it turned out like they didn't know each other well either. A few of them did, but the majority were kind of meeting each other, for the first time, or maybe they had met them, but they didn't know their names. So the name tags proved to be really helpful. And then I did them for the first like 2 or 3 events, because, like if you don't see each other for a month or so, it's kind of like, oh, what's that guy's name? And then it's almost more embarrassing the second time. So I felt like that just took away an element of, having to be like, so remind me your name. It was just like everybody's wearing name tags.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, I feel like the not to put pressure on yourself too, right? Like you didn't have anything planned besides socialization. And I think that was really great. And then another thing that I thought about is like nobody touched the wine, which I thought was so funny. Like Kristen's cocktails were so good that everybody was just hitting that up. And which was very surprising to me. It was like, what was it? Like a gin and tonic that was named some Christmassy thing. And then it was like or some sort of gin drink. And then some sort of margarita, like a cranberry margarita or something.
I think I did a bourbon drink, um, like some sort of bourbon based drink, and then yeah, did the margarita kind of a twist on a seasonal margarita. But yeah, I had just bottles of wine thinking like some people will just, kind of just play it safe and have a bottle of wine. And then of course people brought wine as well, as part of the contribution or a gift. But but yeah, and then, my house is, I mean, it's a great size for me and, I can host people, but, I had no idea like how many people would show up until the week of, and, it was like 15 people. And I thought, well, we're just gonna like make do, and most people stood around, you're kind of standing and talking and you've got like a little food plate in one hand, and there were places to kind of set your drink down. And we just figured it out. Like some people sat on the seating that I did have in kind of my gathering or sitting area, but there certainly wasn't like a place for everyone to sit. But kind of the nature of the event, that worked.
It did. It worked really nicely. And I feel like it was almost like musical chairs because some people would sit there and then they get up and walk, and then another person would take their seat. So it worked, I don't know, it worked really nicely. Um, anything else like during the event? I definitely want to talk about follow-up, but anything during the event that we forgot to mention or inviting to the event or what that looked like?
Yeah, I mean, I think conversation flows pretty naturally in a setting like that. Um, and it wasn't my intention to announce to everyone that, oh, I'm a real estate agent and I live in your neighborhood. But I was okay with them knowing that I was a real estate agent. And of course, that comes out when you're meeting people for the first or second time. And, oh, how long have you lived here? What do you do, for work? So that came out, but that was certainly not the focal point of conversation. It was getting to know people, about their family, about, where they moved from, what they do professionally. So yeah, it was just a great event. And of course people kind of move around the room, and as the host, you try to keep moving so that you're meeting and talking with everybody who's there. But
I love that. And I really enjoyed being there because I think if you have, let me start over. I feel like we can feel like we're on an island, right? And I just love having our community because when I did show up, real estate obviously came up. It's very natural to have happened. And I just was able to edify Kristen and be like, she is one of the best realtors. I mean, besides myself, but she is wonderful. No, I'm just kidding. I never said that.
but you don't live in the neighborhood.
Exactly. No, I never said that. But yeah, I was just like, she's wonderful and blah blah blah. And it was funny, like a couple of the conversations I had, they were like, oh, my son just bought. I wish I would have known that. So it's awesome that that is now starting to happen a little more naturally. So
Mhm.
so what about follow-up? What did that look like? Did you thank people for coming, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I don't think I had any sort of system in place. I just knew that I wanted to begin collecting information so that I could easily invite to the next event. And I told people like, I hope this is the first of many events. I didn't have a calendar or a schedule of what was going to happen after that, because this stuff is organic and you just have to feel it out. And sometimes they flop and sometimes they are a big success, so you don't know until you get started and try it. But so I didn't really have a plan other than I wanted to make sure I had their information. And then I did, begin to add them to my database, just more so as a place to just one place to capture all that information besides, my phone. Um, and then, and then it was within a couple weeks, certainly after the holidays, that I planted a seed about doing the next event. And so, that one then was just an email invitation. But then people who weren't able to come but knew another neighbor, would hear about, like, oh, Kristen, she hosts events for us, and you should come to the next one. And so kind of word got out amongst people who weren't able to come, to that first event or even the second one. So there was no real formal follow up, but then I guess the invitation list just continued to evolve and grow, and people would text me and say, hey, can you add Joanne to the invite list? Here's her phone number, or here's her email. So it just kind of grew organically.
That's awesome. So let's talk about some examples of other events. Yeah, just all the things. I have to grab my water and so you just drink. I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
it's like, I'm thirsty.
But go ahead and tell us all the different examples of things you've done so far.
Great. So the follow-up to the holiday happy hour was a chili cook-off that I did in January. And so that was another great kind of seasonal event. Like, the winter is a great time for chili, and so had, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 entrants, and did like ballots, like legitimate ballots. I think you had a ballot that I stole, and was able to utilize. So it just kind of gamified the event and made it really fun. So it would have been fun just to have chili together, but then it sort of added a new element, and there was like no pressure. Like, you don't have to bring a chili to enter. You can just come enjoy chili, bring some toppings. And it was a great simple evening. And then I was inspired by, there's a local brewery that does a music bingo event at the venue, and I had been to it a couple times with some friends, and I had actually done a little client event there as well. But that inspired me to see if I could recreate it for my neighbors and do an event, at my house around that same theme. And so I did. I was able to find some guys. You just gotta like do some research, but found some like free tools on the internet of how to create like bingo cards that had, music from the 60s and music from the 70s. And I tailored my playlist to my demographic of my neighborhood. And it was a blast. It was so much fun. My only regret about that event is I should have had a friend come and play DJ, because I ended up playing DJ, and they're all sitting around the table like having a blast, and they're singing, and I mean, of course I could too, but it was like I had to queue up the next song, or you only play it for 30 seconds or 60 seconds. So anyway, that was my only regret from that event, but it was really fun. Another event, you and I have both done this kind of event in our neighborhoods, but a progressive style event. And so I got, asked for volunteers who wanted to host a portion of the evening, and had more than enough willing volunteers. And so we picked 3 houses, and, did appetizers and cocktails at one house, went and had like a big salad and bread at somebody else's, and then did dessert at the last house. And we just kind of travel in groups through the neighborhood, walking together. And that was so much fun. I think that was the best attended event. I think we had like 18 people that showed up for that one. And then, as you mentioned earlier, Corey, I've begun to kind of slowly like fold my neighbors into my larger database, for client events. So I did an event at the Asheville Tourists game this summer, and included my neighbors in that invite. So some neighbors came to that event. And then just last week, I did a ice cream sundaes and a school supply drive to contribute to local families, that need help with those school supplies. So, just a variety of different events. And, of course, the challenge is thinking of like, what else can you do besides like a happy hour? And there's nothing wrong with doing happy hours. I mean, you could just do those and it would be totally fine. But I like the challenge of being creative and thinking of ideas. And Corey, you and I kind of riff off each other, and we share ideas, and so that's fun. There's a whole community of people, that you can get ideas from, and we're happy to share our list too.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I stole the Sunday ice cream. And it was just so amazing. It was fun to give back to the community too. Like it was just such a fulfilling thing. And I was trying to think of some of the other examples. I'm in an HOA, so also I provided dinner for a HOA meeting because they typically are like 5 to 7 around that time. And I didn't say it's for my real estate business, but people were like, how much money do we owe you? Or that kind of thing. And I was just like, no, like tax write-off. Like everybody knows at this point that I'm in real estate. So, and that progressive party, that's one of my favorites. Your favorite too?
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
that's awesome.
sure.
That's awesome.
And not because I didn't host, like that was the only event that I haven't hosted. And not because I didn't want to or wasn't willing. There were just so many other volunteers that I was like, hey, I'm gonna let them have a shot at this, and then just made sure I came around them to support however I could. Did they need extra supplies, napkins, plates, whatever. But everybody was like, perfectly happy um to pull it off. So
I love that. And I feel like what it's created, I know in my business, it's just so neat to see like something that you have been in charge of. Like I've seen two neighbors recently walking by that never would have walked by together unless I hadn't created the event. So I love that. Like it's more than just business. It's the community.
it is. Yeah, I love that. That reminds me too of some of the interplay that I've seen happen too, where you mentioned, one of my neighbors has a handyman business. And so, of course, I was willing to put his information out, to my clients, to past clients, to just, even though I hadn't used him yet, to just give a character reference and, say he's a good guy. And so I've had clients utilize him. So that's been fun. And so then in turn, he helps me in my business. And then other neighbors have been like, hey, do you have his contact information? Because they didn't get it, at the event. And so I've shared his info with several people. So it's been fun to see that benefit his business, or, if there's other small business owners, or even, anything, just ways that we can help each other. Yeah, we have, as I mentioned, elderly neighbors, and there's another couple that on that night we did the progressive meal, knew that they would have trouble walking. We have kind of steep steep roads in the neighborhood, and so they offered to go pick them up, and they were like their Uber for the evening, and so they drove them to each house, and it was just so sweet to like see that care, for each other. So fun.
That's so good. So let's get down to the nitty gritty details of like the business that you've gotten recently. So it's been 6 or 7 months that you've been doing this.
Yeah, I guess, well, almost 8, started in December.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so about an 8-month period.
Perfect.
And it takes a while. And I had to just go into it knowing that this was a long game. This isn't something that you're necessarily gonna see fruit from right away. But I think there was just a confidence or trust factor, knowing this is good activity. This is the right thing to be doing. And again, there's other upsides besides how it helps my business. So it was a win for me either way. But yeah, I mean, it's really just been in the last month that, I've had neighbors reach out who are currently renting in the neighborhood and want to begin their search for property, and they want to use me as their realtor. So that was really encouraging. And then they also have a friend who's living with them, and she's thinking seriously about also purchasing real estate. And then another neighbor who I actually just met through another neighbor, said, "Hey, my mom wants to move here from Hickory, and, can you be on the lookout? Here's some of the criteria." So yeah, so who knows where those go, and obviously I hope they turn into closed transactions, but still major upside, just in that relationship building.
That's awesome. So have they approached you by yourself, or have they approached you at the event, or has it been a mixture of?
All of them were outside of the events.
That's cool.
One I ran into in a local restaurant, and they were like two neighbors were having dinner together, and one I hadn't actually personally met yet, knew about her. And so it was like one neighbor introducing me to another. And then, yeah, the other folks, we had just been, texting about some property in the area, just kind of casual communication. And then it sort of rounded the corner to, "Oh, and just so you know, we want to use you as our realtor." Like they weren't just taking advantage of maybe local information that I had, or knowledge about a particular property. So yeah, so that's been fun.
All right. Let's see. Will you continue to do these? I feel like obvious, but
yeah, no, it's a fair question, because I think there's a temptation sometimes to just let things kind of peter out. You have a strong start, but then you get busy and you feel like people are distracted, or they're traveling, or there's too much going on. And so you're always fighting some sort of um, yeah, pressure or perceived obstacles. But I enjoy them so much that I'm going to continue um, to do things. And, and I think there's also pressure to like, oh, the next event has to top the last one. Some my neighbors will joke sometimes, and they'll be like, "Well, Kristen, what are you going to come up with next? Like, you've got all these like great ideas." Kind of, when are you going to run out of ideas? And I'm like, well, then I go to my friends and we share ideas. I'm like, I don't create these in a vacuum. Bless you. So yeah, so I hope to continue to do these events, just because they've been great fun for me personally, and I think they have enjoyed them. And of course, I hope that it also has a positive impact on my real estate business.
so what's the next event? You just had one, but
I know, I feel like, shoot. Yeah, it was just last Thursday. So I've kind of had, generally speaking, like a 6 month or a 6 week frequency. Something, it's not quite monthly, but you don't want too much time to go past. So yeah, so probably, by mid to late September, I'll do something. I'm not sure yet what it looks like. Maybe something fall-ish, fall related. We'll see. I know. Now you're gonna have my the gears are turning.
That's great. Okay, so a not so fun question, but a question that will help a lot of people. What challenges have you ran into with these events? Like what things have, yeah, been maybe better way to put it, where you failed forward?
Hmm. Good question. I mean, my gut answer is that I wish I'd started them sooner. Um, I mean, it is what it is, and you start when you start. But um, where would my business be if I'd started it a year sooner? You just don't know. Um, so definitely don't wait on, if you've been thinking about this idea, um, and there's no prescription here. So don't feel like you have to do things exactly the way I've done them, or if you know Corey and how she's done her events, like it doesn't have to be cookie cutter. You can put your own spin, your own frequency. If you can do one a quarter and that's the best you can do, great. Like go for it. But don't sit on the opportunity is kind of one thing I would offer. Um
I feel like, and I can add it while you're thinking on it too. Like
yeah.
one of the things that I've done for my invitations is like a group text, and there are like three neighbors that I can think of that don't want to be on the group text. They requested not to be, and which means I, Corey, forget to extend the invite out to those three. So I've been better about that now that I know that that's my challenge by the Reach app. That's been one of my favorites. But then I can send out individual text and they don't have to be, nobody has to be part of the group text. But I can remind people in the group text because those are people, my people that typically show up. So I think that's been a fail forward moment of like making sure you're consistent in your, invitations and all that.
Yeah, that's a good word. Because I did have, a neighbor or two that, they just missed an invite, and it wasn't for, I mean, they were included.
Mm.
But it's hard to know like how much to follow up, because it's something that is just, I want them to feel like they're included, but if they don't respond, then they don't respond, and I just assume that they're not interested, or that they're not around. But I usually try to get an email invitation out, and then if depending on the timing of the event, I'll do a follow-up text invite to them individually, where I can forward the invite from Evite. I also make use of Reach, and that's a great way. I don't really even do many group text messages anymore, just because I know I don't like them, and a lot of people don't. Sometimes you have to. It's just the way it goes when you're trying to get numbers and have everybody on the same page. But for the most part, I don't need to do group text, so I just do the individual route. um but yeah, I don't know.
That's great. I love it. What about okay, my last question for you. Um I'm using good old Chat GPT because I wanted to have a few more questions for you. And I love this. How do you incorporate feedback from attendees to improve your future events?
Hmm.
It's probably like the amount of giggles you've received. Like, oh, that's a good bingo night's a good one.
Well, it's kind of like, I mean, part of me feels like if if another neighbor was hosting an event in our neighborhood, like I'm probably not going to offer any like criticism, or because they're voluntarily hosting something in the neighborhood. And so like I really, the feedback I've gotten from the neighbors has been overwhelmingly positive. um like, they made me a plaque, like a certificate. Which was just, it made me like crack up. But then I was also like, that is so sweet. That they took the time to like put this certificate together. Um, yeah, honoring me as like the social events coordinator of the neighborhood. But no,
I
the
think
feedback is,
I think people just um love that you're taking that responsibility, and I feel like everybody enjoys it. The people who show up and they continue to show up, and they just love that the like thought is taken out of it for themselves, and they just show up.
Mhm.
Except for Progressive Party, but that's a good way to get people more involved. So
Yeah, if they want to be. Yeah, and I've said before that like it's a um we often think that, oh, the people who have the biggest house should be the ones hosting, because they can accommodate everybody. And it doesn't work like that at all. And when you think about hospitality is just something you offer as part, it's like an extension of yourself. And so it doesn't matter like how big your home is. What matters is how people feel when they're in your home. And so you can have a big house and people not feel very welcome or at home there, or you can have a small one and people feel very comfortable. So that's always a thought of mine is like, don't get distracted by what your house looks like or where are people going to sit. I mean, you have to give some, thought to that, but yeah, it's really more about the environment that you create and how people feel when they're in your presence, in your home, and sharing time together.
so good. It makes me want to go create our next event. Let's do it. All right. Any parting thoughts? Thank you so much for doing this with me. It's been awesome.
Yeah, no, like I said, this is a really fun topic for me. And selfish plug, Corey and I do a podcast together called Momentum. And we actually just did a podcast episode all about neighborhood events. So another kind of way for you to get some of this content if you need a refresher or want to listen to it while you're on your way to a showing or something. Um, but no, it's a topic near and dear to me. I love it, and I love the camaraderie that we have and sharing ideas and things that we can do in our respective neighborhoods. So happy to be a resource or a help to anyone who is wanting to do this or needs some ideas or help with logistics. Feel free to reach out. Happy to help.
So good. Kristen, you're the best. All right. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you all for tuning in.
Thanks. We'll see ya.
Bye.